Friends, hello. We're gonna go ahead and get started. So we have our friends from Project upGRADS through the Office of Graduate Studies here to talk to you all about Graduate School 101 and how you can start preparing. So without further ado, I will leave it to you if you can introduce yourself.
Well, hello everyone. Thank you all for being here today. So this is Grad School 101. This is just the kind of tip of the iceberg on the introduction to graduate school. What is graduate school? How can it help you? And again, so my name is Christian Flores. I'm the advising coordinator at Project upGRADS. I have joining me Luis Molina. He's our program director. And let's go ahead and go to the next slide. And so again, this is just one of our many workshops. We also have our Cal State Apply workshop, which if you're ready to start the application process, is kind of guiding through that process if you're looking to apply to a CSU. And so you can actually scan this QR code to follow our Instagram, and that will take you to the links to register for those workshops. So those will be upcoming workshop dates. We also have a financial aid workshop for applying for financial aid. I'll briefly talk about financial aid as well as the Cal State Apply process in this workshop. So those two workshops go more into detail. Again, this is just kind of the tip of the iceberg. So I encourage you all to follow our Instagram to get more information on that. Anyone go to my next slide? So just to kind of give you a brief overview, what we'll talk about today, this is kind of an intro on grad school, how to find a program, what the application process looks like, graduate school funding, and other available resources on campus that are there to help you once you actually do start grad school. So let's go ahead and go to the next slide. So why go to grad school? There are many reasons why someone might want to go to grad school. Usually, that has more to do with the job market and more opportunities. You can go ahead and go to the next slide, please. So again, greater income potential. There is less likelihood to be unemployed. Increased leadership roles. For some jobs, it is required to have a graduate degree. There's greater ability to help your family and community, through networking opportunities. There is more access to healthcare and retirement plans through those, job opportunities that you have access to. So again, there are many reasons why someone might want to go to grad school. These are just some of them, not all of them. Of course, everyone has their reasons to want to do it. So you can go ahead and go to the next slide. There are many fields that one can go into as far as grad school goes. These are just some jobs that someone might be able to attain with a graduate degree. Art director, political scientist, economist, education administrator, psychologist, interpreter and translator, or social worker. Again, these are across many different disciplines. It's not just one discipline that will allow for you to have access with a graduate degree. So many different fields have a partnered graduate degree that will allow for you to have access to different careers. And so you can go ahead and go to the next slide. And so just to kind of give you perspective, these are some careers or degrees and their corresponding undergraduate and graduate degree incomes, and how a graduate degree can really make a difference. If you see, for example, a degree in like social work, the degree with a bachelor's, an undergraduate degree, you see 42,000 as a median salary, and then with the graduate degree, you see 56,000. Again, this is just nationwide. It can vary again from state to state, what the cost of living there is. You see, like, for example, civil engineering, you have 89,000 with just a bachelor's degree, and you see with a graduate degree, 107,000. And again, some people might, for example, be content with that salary with a bachelor's degree, but then maybe they want to move up with into a higher leadership role, and they decide to pursue that master's degree. That might be a really good reason why they decide to do that. Some people, that's the reason why they decide to do it, and the income is just an added bonus. So again, that's something to kind of think about as far as why someone might decide to pursue a degree, graduate degree. So you can go ahead and go to the next slide. So what does graduate school look like? I really like this comic because it really kind of describes the first generation experience. in college. So this individual in this comic is kind of saying that they're defending their thesis, and the parent is, trying to hype them up, and they're kind of explaining what exactly that means. And so it says, it means I'm getting close to graduating, but there's still a possibility they'll fail me and I'll have to stay longer or drop out. And so the parents like, so I shouldn't get excited. And the student is saying, well, a little excited would be nice, they still need the encouragement. So I think that for many of us first generation students who have gone through any kind of academic process, I think that that's kind of what it's like, explaining to our parents what we're going through, step by step. So that's kind of why I included this. You can go ahead and go to the next slide. So what does graduate school actually look like? So in terms of comparing undergraduate to graduate experiences, the structure is different. You have a structured curriculum in undergraduate programs versus in graduate school, you might have a structured curriculum, but there is an increased autonomy, which makes it less structured because you can go ahead and when it comes to research what really strikes you, what's important to you, and that goes back to what knowledge is. Undergraduates are expected to learn what's already out there, versus when you're a graduate student, you are expected to contribute to the new knowledge and create research, and to contribute to that research through your interests within your discipline. So that's really how the structure really differs. You can go ahead and go to the next slide. And so that kind of goes back into what academics look like. When you're a graduate student versus undergraduate, when you're an undergraduate, a 3.0 GPA is considered, a good GPA versus when you're a graduate student, a 3.0 is like borderline being put on academic probation. Anything below a 3.0 would put you on that probation, and you would be at risk for disqualification if you do not raise your GPA back up above that 3.0 mark. So it's really important to really be conscious of what your GPA is at all times, because you can have one semester where that GPA is just not looking good, and it can put you on that probation, and it could, throw you off significantly. As far as courses go, classes tend to meet, once a week. Maybe you'll have, a Monday, Wednesday, Friday schedule, or a Tuesday, Thursday schedule, and your classes will be about 3 hours long. Depending on what program you're in, some classes, you'll have maybe like a lab, you'll have a discussion, or you'll have a studio class if you're, maybe in the arts. And most classes are going to be in the evenings. They're going to start, maybe in the afternoon and stretch out into the evening. And the average course load ranges anywhere from, 6 to 9 units is like the average. Some students who maybe are at part-time enrollment go from, 3 to 6 units. And then some programs, because of like internships, for example, social work, counseling, any program like that, they might have units as high as 12 to 15. So it really depends on your program. But that's kind of generally what graduate school looks like as far as the academics component of it and enrollment aspect. You can go ahead and go to the next slide. And so this kind of goes back to the comic strip that was in the slideshow earlier. So culminating experiences. So every graduate student has to have a culminating experience. This can either include, a thesis, a project, or a comprehensive exam. And so some programs may only give you one option. Some programs may allow you to choose 2. Some program may have all 3 options available. So it really depends on which program you're in and what options they allow for you to choose from. One program, they might have you choose between a thesis or a comprehensive, or only a thesis, or only a project, or only a comprehensive, or a comprehensive and a so it just really depends. And some programs, maybe you can only do a thesis if you have a certain GPA. So if you want to do a thesis, you have to maintain that GPA, or else they won't think of you as capable enough to handle the requirements of a thesis. So it really depends what what your program requires of you in order to be able to accomplish that comprehensive culminating experience rather. So you can go ahead and go to the next slide. And so this is kind of the most important one of all that I think here is, how do you find a grad school and a program, or a program and a grad school? So you can go ahead and go to the next slide. So it's really important to ask yourself, what are your interests? Research schools and programs And then once you find a program in a school or schools and programs, prepare your application based off of what the requirements are. And here I'll briefly talk about how to initiate that process. So, learn about the field that you're in or the field that you want to go into and how that interests you. Attend conferences. And the reason I say that is, there you might meet people who are already in the field, who are already doing what you want to be doing, whether it be research or professionally working in that discipline. Join national discipline organizations. Partner, with faculty at your campus currently, and participate in research projects. Volunteer, participate in internships or jobs within the field. Many programs may require you to have that experience, and then also take extra upper division courses, some electives that are going to give you that opportunity to really submerge yourself in that experience. But again, going back to the conference aspect, if you're going to conferences, it's going to give you a really good insight as far as to what kind of research is being conducted in the field that you want to go into. There, you might even meet faculty from other universities that maybe you want to apply to, and you're going to be able to network. Networking is a huge component of graduate school. So again, learn about your field, what interests you, and how to really expand. That's a really important component of the research process. We can go ahead and go to the next slide. Another aspect that kind of goes back to the networking aspect is get to know your faculty. You should really be connecting with those who are teaching your classes currently, whether it be in a formal or informal setting, inside and outside of class. Visit their office hours. Ask them questions when you need help. Make sure you're communicating with them at all times. But also let them get to know you. What are your academic interests? What are your experiences? That way, if you have questions, they already know how to answer them, catered and tailored to what your needs are. That's really important. And that way, as you move forward in the application process, that you can turn to them in order for them to kind of, maybe refer you to maybe programs, to schools, and even potentially write you letters of recommendation, potentially refer you to other faculty, other schools. That's very important in this application process. We can go ahead and go to the next slide. And that goes to this component. How do you find a school and a program? So, make sure that you're paying attention to your needs as well as what you're looking for in a program. Make sure you're paying attention to rankings, whether it be program rankings and school rankings, what your needs are. Are you wanting to relocate? Are you wanting to stay local? Do you have a job that you can't leave? Do you have the desire to leave, or do you have a family that you have to stay committed to? Do you want to go public or do you want to go private? What funding opportunities are available at the schools that you're interested in? Those are all really important questions, and you really need to be asking yourselves when doing your research. Going back to the aspect of school rankings, maybe you're looking at a really amazing school that's really well known, but maybe the program isn't as highly ranked at another school that's maybe not as well known, but the program is completely, top notch, high ranked within the field. That's something that you have to take into consideration. I've heard of schools that are so small, but then you hear about maybe a graduate program that is top ranked and ranked, higher than some of the big name schools. That's something that you have to take into consideration. Also, potentially with the networking aspect, it's like wherever you decide to go to grad school, that's where your network is going to be. That's going to be the hub of your network. So whenever you finish grad school, there's a potential that that's where you're going to be settling down with your internships. You might be connected professionally there to the organization that you intern for. They might offer you a job. Are you willing to settle there permanently after you graduate? So those are things you have to ask yourself. If you're planning to return home, how easy is it going to be for you to connect with a job where you are originally from? Those are things that are really important when you're applying to grad school and finding a program, finding a school. So you can go ahead and go to the next one. And so how do you gather information? These are just some of the links that you can go ahead and find information for. But a really great tool that you should really turn to is look at the list of faculty who are currently teaching in your program if that's what you're interested in. Look at where they've taught at, or look at where they've taught in school at. Look at the research that they've contributed to, who they've worked with. Is it what interests you? If there's a faculty member that you really genuinely just admire, what does their resume look like? Where did they go to school? Where did they learn? And maybe there's a school there that you're interested in, and then you can do some more research on. Or you can just ask them, where do you recommend that I look into? And you can email them, write them a short email, attach a resume, or if there's a school that you're into, just email a faculty member. Again, look at their information and just reach out and tell them, I saw this, and this on your resume that or on your CV that you researched. I want to ask more about this and how maybe I can get into this. It all goes back to the whole networking aspect. And that's how you can gather more information about what your interests are. You can go to the next slide. So I'm not sure if there are any questions maybe in the chat that I can answer just before moving on to the next section.
I do not see it.
All right, let's go ahead and move on. So then there's the process of applying to grad school at Cal State Fullerton. Let's go ahead and move on to that next slide. So there is a two-step process generally to applying to any CSU, namely Fullerton, in this case that we're going to be discussing. So you must be admitted to both the university and to your program. And there may be different requirements based off of the program and that differ from being admitted to the university. So you have to be CSU eligible, but you also must meet the department standards that are set upon within the department. So again, you have to make sure you're looking at those two in a sense separately, because the standards for the department or the program might be completely significantly higher, significantly more rigorous. And we'll talk about what those look like briefly. You can go ahead and go to the next slide. So in order to apply to the university, you would go to calstate.edu/apply, and you would submit the application to the university. In some cases, you can submit all your program materials straight on the application. In other instances, you must submit those materials straight to the program or the department. So you have to make sure you're paying attention. Those might include, transcripts, any tests, especially, if you might have completed a degree, overseas or outside the country or what have you. If you're a transfer student, things like that. You can go ahead and go to the next section. As far as what the department has, they might have other materials that they might need from you. They might require a portfolio, they might require a resume, they might even require an interview. Those are supplemental materials that they might need from you. They might require a writing sample, a statement of purpose. They might require a personal statement, and those are all different things. So you need to make sure that you also understand what the difference between those are, because they're all going to mean different things for the application. You might have to even submit test scores, and so you need to make sure that you have completed those if needed in a timely manner. So for example, maybe for one application you might need the GRE, but for another one you might need the GRE plus the GRE subject test. So you need to make sure that you have those supplemental materials prepared. Then some applications you might, for example, think, okay, well, I need a 3.0 GPA, and maybe you have a 2.8, but you're looking at your overall GPA holistically. And some programs only look at the last 60 units. And so that's another thing. Some people worry about those that GPA, and maybe your last 60 units, you have a 3.5. And so you need to make sure that you are not, in a sense, overthinking that whole 2.8 because of that small fine print. Make sure that you're looking at the fine print, every single little detail. You can go ahead and go to the next section. And make sure that you're also paying attention to deadlines, because every single program will have a different deadline. For example, you might be applying to one program at one school, and even though it's the same type of program at another university, they might have programs that are deadlines that are months apart. So it's important that you're paying attention to those deadlines, because again, you might be prepared to submit one application months in advance before the other one, even though the deadline for the second one is far closer than the one that you already have prepared. So it's really important that you're paying attention to those deadlines. Again, making sure that you have, you're paying attention to how you need to submit those materials, whether it be on a separate portal, like some programs here at Cal State Fullerton, require, or that you have the contact information for how to submit those if you need to submit them directly via email. And you can always check the program or department websites for how to do that if necessary. If they're not directly linked on the Cal State Apply websites, if you're looking to apply for CSU or Cal State Fullerton. And usually, if you attend one of the Cal State Apply workshops, you'll be able to see how that works. You can go to the next section. So, Cal State Fullerton has various colleges. They have various programs. These are all the colleges at Fullerton. If you go to the next slide, these are all the programs. I'm not going to go through every single one because that would take forever. But just so you can see, there are programs that are very similar in what they offer students. So also it's important to look at what your objective is in obtaining a master's degree. What is the difference between counseling, social work, and clinical psychology, and what will that have to offer you once you complete the program? So it's important that, again, you ask yourself, what do I want to be when I grow up? And how will this degree help me? So again, these are all the programs, and it's important for you to do that research and go back to that initial question, what program is right for me? So we can go to the next slide. Are there any questions as of now?
I did get a question in the chat, but I believe you're going to address it later, but please feel free to give some more insight if you like. The question was if there are going to be one-to-one meetings in case they have specific questions like how to fill out the FAFSA for grad school.
Yes, so we do have one-on-one meetings if students do have questions about that, but we also will have a financial aid workshop in November. We will have, I believe there's 3 of them in November and there's 1 in December.
Okay.
So we will have those workshops available for students to join as a group, but we also do have one-on-one appointments available. I'll have a QR code for you to scan to set up those appointments as well.
And then I will also share the schedule that you all have for the other workshops.
All right, great.
Really quickly, can you also touch on, because you're talking about the different deadlines for different programs, but also how different deadlines will also affect how they ask for those letters of recommendation. They may be asking the same professor for a couple different letters.
Oh yeah, that's actually a really good point. That's actually something that I touch on our Cal State Apply workshop, because on the Cal State Apply application, it allows for you to enter the deadline that you want your professors to submit the application, the letters of recommendation. So say, for example, maybe I'm going to give the Masters of Social Work program here at Fullerton as an example. The deadline is January 15th. And so say, for example, I know it's right before the holidays. You're not going to want to list, January 15th as a deadline when you know that the holidays are the month right before. So I usually tell students I would have the deadline request right before the holidays. That way, you don't have that lag of the professor forgetting during the holidays, and then that way, the deadline rolls around and you completely forget, and then your application is past the deadline and you can no longer submit that application. So on the Cal State Apply, I know that the only thing with the social work program though is that they have their own portal. So I'm not quite sure how it looks on their portal, but for other programs, though, you can, for example, I believe it's public administration, you can do that because everything goes on the Cal State Apply portal. But other programs, you have to manually submit everything. So usually I tell students it's recommended that if you have a deadline to ask a few weeks or maybe even a whole month in advance before the deadline, but also ask professors at a minimum a month before the deadline that you need it by. That way you're not asking last minute. And then that way they also have time to write a concise, thorough letter of recommendation. So it's not something that's written last minute. It's something that's crafted and tailored to who the student is. So here we're going to talk about funding for graduate school. A lot of people are under the misconception that there is not funding for graduate school. So that's kind of something that we're going to debunk right now. So let's go ahead and go to the next slide. So at the CSU level, we have what's called the State University Grant. And so again, this is only available for students attending a CSU campus. In order to be eligible for this, you must file a FAFSA application or California DREAM Act application by the priority filing deadline, which is March 2nd. So one thing to note that's really important is that the application period started to be open as of October 1st. So even, for example, if your application for grad school is not ready, you can still file your FAFSA. which is something that students are not aware of. They think that you have to already have submitted your grad school application. So even if you don't have your application ready, you can still submit your FAFSA. You can still submit your California Dream Act. And so if you already know the schools you're applying to, if you have already narrowed down the programs, my biggest recommendation is to file your FAFSA first so you can get that out of the way. In order, again, to be eligible for the CSU, for the State University grant, you have to have that FAFSA on file before March 2nd. You must be a California resident or be eligible for AB 540. What the State University grant essentially does, it will cover the state university tuition. And so depending on which CSU you decide to attend, the out-of-pocket fees will be different because every single CSU has their own separate fees based off of the campus amenities. So say, for example, you might be paying a higher student union fee at one campus over another, or athletics fee, or associate students incorporated fee, or student health center fee. So it really just depends on which campus you choose. I always tell students the cheapest CSU, which is Cal State LA, is 125 per semester. The most expensive CSU, the fees per semester are I believe about $360 per semester, which is Bakersfield. So you'll never see them exceed or go below that per semester out of pocket. That's kind of what you're looking at. And so in order to be eligible, again, you have to have that submitted. You must be enrolled at least half time, which in this case would be 6 units, and it will cover up to 125% of your graduate program. So say, for example, maybe you need to stay an extra semester or you wanted to take some elective classes here and there. It would cover some of those, maybe about 2 to 3 classes of elective units, like things like that. I know because I was eligible for State University grant and I took elective classes that were covered by the State University grant. So things like that, the State University grant would cover aside from your graduate program. You can go ahead and go to the next slide. You also can receive the student loans. So currently the federal direct unsubsidized Stafford loan, which is a traditional student loan, is eligible for graduate students as well. The current rate is 5.28%, which is actually a higher rate than we've seen in prior years. So one important thing, again, it goes back to the State University grant. You should ideally, again, if you know that you're eligible for it, file your FAFSA, file your CDA, because if you don't, then you're kind of going to be in a tough situation where if you don't want to take out student loans, it's kind of going to be one of the last resorts if you're not going to apply for any kind of scholarships or anything like that. And the student loan rates are actually significantly higher than they've been in prior years. They actually went up a full % between this year and last year. And again, then another one is going to be the Federal Direct Plus loan for graduate students. And that one, you do have to submit a credit check, things like that. So that will impact your credit score as well. So it's really important that you are filing, if you know that you're eligible for a State University grant, you are filing your FAFSA before that March 2nd deadline. Because it may impact you being able to receive it. And I say this because the later that you file, the later the Office of Financial Aid can notify you if you're missing any extra documentation, if you're selected for verification. And with the pandemic, it does take a little bit longer for them to first receive it and then process it, especially because they are a little bit more short-staffed than they normally would be. So it's really important that you do file that sooner rather than later. So you can go ahead and go to the next section. There are also scholarship opportunities. There's the Alumni Association Student Scholarship. There's a Chicano Latino Faculty and Staff Association Scholarship. These are just some of them. There are more information on the Cal State Fullerton Financial Aid website about scholarships that are eligible for all students, both undergraduate and graduate students, and as well as the eligibility requirements and the amounts that students would be receiving. So these are just some of them that students can apply for. Again, there's so many listed on that website. So I urge you all to look at those if maybe student loans is not an option. If you know that you don't want to pay for those, if you know that you're going to be eligible for the State University grant, and you don't want to pay for those fees out of pocket. That's something that you should really look into. You can go to the next slide. There's also the Palante Fellowship Program, which is the program that I actually help operate. And so with this one, we aim at basically improving the educational experience of underserved students at Cal State Fullerton With this program, you would be receiving a total of $1,000 for the academic year, so 500 in the fall, 500 in the spring. And this program, it provides a really amazing fellowship opportunity for students. You know, you get paired up with a mentor, you are able to attend career development workshops, and you also have a cohort where you're able to interact with other students within your fields. You know, build a community with one another. Right now, our deadline has not been set, but it is in the spring. You are required to submit an application form and one letter of recommendation. So the application isn't difficult to apply for. So we encourage those who are interested to apply. And again, the link is there. You can, if you scan our QR code earlier in the workshop, more information is also available on our Instagram and will be available as time moves forward closer to that deadline. But also the Graduate Equity Fellowship. This is very good for students who are potentially interested in pursuing a PhD program or doctoral program. The dollar amount for this one is anywhere from $500 to $2,000. This one does require an application, a personal statement, and a letter of recommendation. Again, this program has not set the deadline for the spring, but you can also get more information on the Office of Graduate Studies website for the requirements of this fellowship. There are also amazing opportunities on campus. For example, graduate assistantships, and these are available, you know, through the Career Center, through each individual college, through the departments, through faculty, especially if you're interested in what's called a teaching assistantship, and also through the Office of Graduate Studies. So the really cool thing about being a GA on campus is that this is not like traditional financial aid. This is what's called work study. And so you'd be able to get an actual paycheck for this. So none of this would go through paying for any tuition or any of that. This is actually money that goes directly into your bank account, to your, like, it's a paycheck. So that's one of the really amazing things. Again, I urge you all to look into this if you're interested in going to grad school and you're looking for some income to go to grad school. Lisa, I don't know if you want to talk a little bit more about the services OGS and Project upGRADS offer students as well.
Yeah, sure. So thank you for that first portion, Christian. Very well put. I'm going to sit or else my head will cut off. Yeah, so let's see. Let's talk about, I think this is the last section. So we're going to talk about transitioning grad school with a little help from the grants, Project upGRADS, and Office of Grad Studies here at Cal State Fullerton. If you decide to come to Cal State Fullerton, of course. So we can go to the next one. Let's see what we have. So the Office of Grad Studies, who we work in conjunction with, right? Because our grant is focused on underrepresented graduate students, which is why a lot of the underclassmen workshops that we have are just on applying to grad school. So the Office of Grad Studies is actually not even in McCarthy Hall anymore, right? That's the picture of McCarthy Hall. We are in College Park. I say we because we're also in the same suite, 950. And those are the hours that it's open. I know some people stay up to 5 p.m., sometimes 6, but the website is right there. So if you travel to the website, you can see the contact us. You can identify who you need help with, right? Or from, I should say, and then you can set up an appointment using that link as well. We can move forward. So a few resources advising, that's a twofold thing. So if you're a prospective student looking into grad school, right, Christian would be your main point of contact for that. If you're a current student and need some help with advising as far as you falling under academic probation, or you need to take a leave of absence because as a grad student, right, you need to maintain continuous enrollment. It's not like undergrad where you can just take a summer off or a fall off and go to Mexico or something like that. You need to maintain continuous enrollment at all times. So if you are planning to step away from classes for a semester, or you just, you're overwhelmed or something like that, you need to take a semester off, you do need to file what's called a leave of absence with the Office of Grad Studies. So they have an advisor evaluator called, her name's Lynn Winter. She's amazing. She will help you. Graduation check. So when you're ready to graduate, you're in your last semester, you do have to notify the Office of Grad Studies that you are going to be graduating. You have to let them know. That way you fill out a grad check and therefore you can get your diploma on time, right? There'll be no issues there. The last bullet point there, Graduate Student Success Center was a center that was built only for grad students in 2016 by a previous grant. Unfortunately, right now, we go to the next one, I think it talks a little bit more. Unfortunately, right now it's closed because after the pandemic, right, after the Office of Grad Studies took over, once we came back, they're still transitioning it in and they don't have enough staff or graduate assistant support to have it open. But we plan to reopen hopefully later this fall, and if not in the spring. But what's really cool about this center is that it's for grad students only. Sometimes that helps a little bit because it's a little bit quieter. There are computers, whiteboards, charging stations. So almost everything that there is in the undergrad centers as well. There's a fridge, there's free coffee. And then tutors is a service that was really popular there. So the tutors at the grad level tend to be lecturers or adjunct faculty, either here or neighboring community colleges. So it's a little bit more of a elevated, I guess I should say, right, tutoring, providing. It has workshops on thesis and things like that. And it is located on the 3rd floor of the south side of the library, 365. So I think that concludes the presentation. This QR code was meant for people that are here in person.
Oh,
Right. We have the link for the people that are joining us on Zoom.
Yes.
So it'll take, I'm not kidding, a minute maybe to complete. It's some very simple questions. Was that?
This is just contact information. You want to set up any?
Oh, I wanna move forward.
Yeah, so that's the survey. And I think we have a few more slides. We do questions and answers. So if everyone could just, the people that are joining us on Zoom, if they could just complete that survey, and then we'll open it to Q&A, and then we'll have more. I mean, Kenisa can also give them a contact info after.
Yes, I will send our information out. I do have a question that came in the chat.
Hmm?
I think this is a good time to ask. Let me just pull up. The question was, and I think that's just more clarification on the CalState Apply and the specific public program application. So do students need to submit the CalState Apply application first, then the specific program application, or does the order matter?
It'd probably be best to first, you could travel to the department page and see what they're asking for. Like we said, it happens simultaneously. So you could go into the CalState Apply, and then if programs that are using quadrant 4, again, this is, if you haven't looked at CalState Apply, this is going to sound right, you're not going to know, but there's 4 quadrants, and quadrant 4 is called the program materials section. There you can find out, again, you can also find out through the program website, but you can find out whether they're using it. Some programs are using it, and that's when you upload everything, and you submit CalState Apply, and then you're done. But programs that are not using it are going to have just a home page, and they're just going to redirect you to wherever they're asking for the rest of the materials. Some of them have their own online system. I think most of them, but I don't think anybody's getting hard copies anymore. So at the very least, they're having their own online system, and that quadrant 4 will tell you, right? If there's different tabs asking for letters of rec, asking for responses to questions, then they're using it. But if there's nothing of the sort, and it's just basically like a paragraph on CalState Fullerton, a paragraph on the program, then at the very bottom, they will have some type of directions to say to fully complete your application. After submitting CalState Apply, you have to turn these in on our website or to this email.
There are some programs where they will not consider your application complete unless you submit it first, the CalState Apply, because when you submit the CalState Apply, it will generate a link to your email to complete the application. So I know some of the business programs, that's how it works.
Okay, so it is important to submit that.
Ideally, yes.
Ideally, it's just the main point is every program is unique and just follow their instructions.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I know that some for undergrads at least, the Cal State Apply application is typically submitted, I think the deadline's like November 30th. Does that apply for grad students too, or do they go by the program deadline?
Program.
So there are even some programs where they'll have an open deadline until March 1st.
Yeah, I've seen
But
that.
if you want like a priority admission, it'll be like December 1st. So what those programs, what they mean by priority is like they'll prioritize the students for admission who applied before that date, before the December 1st. And then any student who applies thereafter, they'll kind of admit them like on a rolling basis until the program gets filled. And say, for example, maybe they fill the program by like February 14th, then any student who applies by that March 1st, they don't get in.
Okay, that's good to know. Thank you. Any other questions that folks have? This is a good time to ask.
And then you can move it, they already submitted their survey. If you go on next one, there's some contact info right there. That grad advising really is what they should use for the general inquiries. Any questions, I'm talking about any questions that might pop up, right? They can email that account. And then, of course, there's if they follow the instrument account, that's kind of like the one-stop shop for all information as far as so we even have YouTube videos on these presentations already uploaded from previous sessions. So there's an abundance of material on our Instagram and YouTube that's being useful. But again, sometimes it helps to, after watching that or after reviewing this video, to have someone there to help you one-on-one. And that's why, like Christian, you see it.
In the next slide, I've included contact information for the people at the Career Center. For example, those who are applying for certain programs, they might want to have the people at the Career Center look over their materials because they do have revisions for example, personal statements and statements of purpose. And they also can help, for example, some programs require mock interviews. So the Career Center will actually help the students with that process if needed. So if you are in a certain college, there's a career specialist dedicated to that college. They can help because they've been part of that process for years. I know that, for example, some of these folks have been part of the Career Center or even part of the university for almost 20 years.
Yeah.
So
I think they come. You guys probably let them know.
Some of them have stopped by. So I know Melody has talked to our new groups. Elizabeth Bobadilla, she used to be a mentor for one of our students. So yeah, we are familiar with some of them. Or Laura is also presenting. Yeah. Yeah, definitely utilize your career specialist. I know for our graduating students, we have the Scholarship Professional Program. One of the requirements you all have to do is meet with your career specialist. So this is a good slide for you to take a picture of so that you can start reaching out to them.
and then this last slide is if you need to set up an appointment with myself, you can scan this one and that will be enabled for, that will take you to basically the link to my calendar where you can enter your information and set up an appointment, and it will generate like a Zoom link with an email. If you want to meet in person, it will also give you the location for where we would meet. So you can scan that and it will take you to that website.
Alrighty, any other questions that folks have for our friends who are still in the room with us? Okay, well, if you all don't have any questions, give a round of applause to our presenters. Thank you all so much for being here. We appreciate you so much. And if you do have questions, but you would like to ask or set up an appointment, definitely take advantage of those opportunities. Like I mentioned earlier, or at the beginning of the presentation, I will be sending out some flyers to you all. And if it's okay with you all to send out the presentation slides, so that you all can take a look at this information, and I'll definitely link those videos that they also mentioned are available on YouTube.